Hello, this is Watch All About with another watch review, and in this review we're looking at a new offering by Deutsche Uhrenfabrik, who are also known as Dufa, much shorter name, and this is the Aalto regulator. So Aalto is AALTO. A lot of Dufa watches are vintage inspired. They all seem to be quite Art Deco inspired, and this is certainly the same. So we'll have a look at it and see if it's a decent watch for the money. So the money you would pay is €499 or £439. So that is quite a fair amount of money, especially considering it's a Miyota movement, but it is made in Germany. So let's go through it and discuss that at the end. So talking about some specs, it's for a smarter watch. It's on the larger side, so it's 42mm in diameter. It has a relatively low profile of 12mm of height, and then a lug-to-lug length of 49mm. So in terms of the size, I personally think it fits quite nicely. I think it also looks pretty stunning because of the size as well. I mean, the regulator obviously splits the hands into three separate dials, if you will. So I think that works really well, and with the larger dial with these really long outstretched hands, I think it looks quite striking personally. The weight is 64 grams, so it's not too heavy. It's got enough weight there for you to feel it and know that it's on, but it's not at all an uncomfortable watch to wear. Water resistance, it's just 30 meters or 3 atmospheres, so you've got to be very, very careful with it. I wouldn't recommend swimming with it at all, and also just be careful in any sort of submersion either. As mentioned before, the movement is the Miyota 8217, so basically it's the same as the more popular 8215 movement, just with the additional 24-hour indicator at 9, which we'll discuss in a bit, because that's actually one of my pet gripes about the watch. Movement, though, is fairly standard in terms of specs. It's low beat, so it runs at 21.6 thousand beats per hour, and you can hand wind it, and it does not have a hacking seconds either, so you can't really get a perfectly exact time to start it and stop it unless it's fully unwound. But saying that, it is very well regulated. It's coming in at, I've put it on my Lepsy watch scope, and it's coming in at plus 5.2 seconds a day, which is pretty impressive really. So obviously they must have done a little bit of regulation, so that's always good to know and good to see. Lug width, so the straps are 20mm, and then they reduce down to 18mm at the buckle. So it's a very suitable width for the 42mm size, and then you have a 2-year warranty, so that's good. Okay, so let's discuss each element in closer detail. So first of all, the dial. I think the design is really, really good. This, in particular, this really long outstretched minute hand, and then if you have a look at it on a slightly more side profile, you'll see it has a downturned tip, and that is because the edging of the dial also has this similar downturned edge, so it follows the contour of the dial, which in turn follows the highly curved boxing of the crystal as well. So I think that in particular is a very stunning piece of design. I think that looks great. The base of the dial also, you can't really see it now, but when I get the macro lens on, you'll be able to see it. It has a sort of like a brushed finish to it, a vertical brush, so that's quite nice to see when you're up close. You can't really see it to the naked eye unless you're really, really close up. So, but it provides a very, very subtle piece of texture to the dial, which again is a nice touch. The logo at 12. I've heard mixed reviews on the logo, but I personally think it actually makes the dial. I think it's really nice and thick and deep, really accurately engraved as well, considering the intricacy of it. Obviously with the macro lens on, we will look at it in closer detail, but for now it's really well applied, really nicely made as well, so it's good to have something stuck onto the dial, because otherwise it is a very, very flat dial if it was just printed on. The printing, very straightforward, just white on black, very fine as well, done to a high level. So these subdials, obviously we have a running seconds hand here at 5, sorry, and then we have the hour indicator at 9. Now usually with the regulator, this would behave in the standard hour hand way. So it would be 1 rotation per 12, and it would be 12 at the top, 6 at the bottom. But no, Dufa have used the Miyota 8217, so in fact all they've done is omitted the hour hand from the main central stack, and just instead put this 24-hour indicator on the side. Now obviously that isn't correct, because the regulator should behave, the regulator hour hand should behave in the same way that the standard hour hand should behave. So basically this, you'd think now looking at it, it would be 17 minutes past 3, but in fact it's actually 17 minutes past 7, because this is now 24 hours per whole rotation rather than 12. So it does take a lot of getting used to, and at a glance you can't really tell the time, which is really frustrating and a shame. The more you wear it though, you do get used to it. I will say that. So I have found that the more I've been wearing it, I have been being able to tell the time faster, but it's still a bit frustrating that obviously it's sold as a regulator, but in fact it doesn't actually behave exactly like it should, which is a bit of a shame. So that's my main pet gripe about the watch. So moving on to the case then. As I mentioned before, we have this lovely boxed crystal sitting on top. In fact, the whole form of the case is really pleasant. So you see we have a very pleasant curve going from the profile of the case all the way into the curvaceous case back as well. Everything's highly polished, fully polished. We have this sort of like split between the bezel and the case main as well, which splits it up a little bit. And we have these very elegant, vintagey kind of lugs as well. So everything's really, really nicely designed. No matter what angle you look at it, it looks really, really nice and really smart. So very happy with the quality of the case. The machining as well is very, very good for yeah. So the crown, if we have a look at the crown, so it has the Dufa logo engraved on the end. It's a nice little badge. It has very good grip as well, so you can wind up the watch really easily, and it's got a nice little indent, so you can pull out the crown and adjust the time really easily as well. So the crown is quite easy to use, very pleasant to use, and looks good as well. So moving on to the case back, I'll just give it a wipe. Obviously it's an exhibition case back, so it's showing off our movement quite nicely. It's screwed in by these 4 screws, but yeah, it's quite simple in appearance, but is done in a really smart way. So you have a very nice bulge to it. Just follows the flowing profile of the case well. Okay, so moving on to the strap. Quick release pins, which I'm always really happy to see, so it's really easy if you did need to change the strap, really easy to change it. I do actually quite like the stamping on here, something I don't usually bother commenting on, but it looks very smart. Echt Leder, obviously a bit of German there, and a grey back to it. Fully black top, quite thin to go with again the vintagey feel, because a lot of vintage watches did have quite thin leather straps, but quality of the leather is really, really nice, really comfortable on, very supple as well, so no breaking in required at all. And if you can see it, you can see it's got a very subtle nice soft grain to the top of it as well, which is really nice to feel, very soft. So moving on to the tang buckle, very nice little feature here with the Dufa badge logo applied onto the end there, with two brushed flanks and a central polished top bar. So that's looks really nice on, really easy to use as you'd expect. It's just a regular tang buckle, but I do like the little bit of extra detail they've put on it there. So there we go. Okay, so let's get the macro lens on and we'll have a look at it in closer detail. Okay, just giving it a wipe. Starting off with the dial then. So here's the badge. Try to get it in. There we go. So you can see there, nicely engraved, pretty accurate and nice and deep as well. The quality is there, applied nicely. And here's our long outstretched minute hand with the tip. And there's our central pinion. You can see here now the brushed backdrop of the dial. Let me just check. Sorry. So there we can see this texture to the dial again is really, really subtle, but it is very, very nice when you look at it up close. Printing there, nice and fine. So dials are, the hands are pretty straightforward really. Okay, so moving on to the case, here's one of the lugs. Got some nice angles on it. And then moving on to the, let me give it a wipe. Quite difficult to get a decent focus on it because it's so highly polished. But you can see here our split from the bezel and the case main. Moving on to our lugs. And then this edge, this top edge, for the crystal as well. Moving over here onto our crown. See the badge engraved on the end there. Some decent grip. If I rotate it. Then if I just give it a little pull out, that's it, pulled out. The underside, there we go. So very nice attention to detail on the crown. Moving on to the case back, so here's our little screws. Have some watch specifics engraved around the outside, which is a good touch. And moving on to our movement then, the Miyota 8217. There's our balance wheel ticking away. It's actually very well finished, much better than you'd usually get from a Miyota. It does look a lot cleaner than a lot of them. Sometimes you get grubby bridges and not the best finishing, but this is actually one of the nicest ones I've ever seen. Everything's looking really good. So we also have this custom rotor, which is nice. So we have it could be just a sticker on the stock rotor, but it's still makes quite an impression, makes a difference. So you have this like a luxurious blue backdrop, and then the Dufa logo applied on with quite thin kind of metallic letters, but it looks nice. It certainly looks the part. So that's good that they've made the effort there. Moving on to the straps, then you have very nice soft top grain with our matching black stitching. And if we flip it over, have our printing on the underside and this side, and then we have our quick release buckles as well, which is a very good touch. Moving on to our buckle, I'll just give it a quick wipe. There's our Dufa logo, our polished top bar, and then our brushed side, and a very curvy central part to the tang buckle as well. Okay, so there we go. So I personally think the €499 or £435 RRP is unfortunately too much. It's got a Miyota movement in it, so I'm reluctant to pay that much, no matter what watch it is. It is a very, very nice watch, I'm not denying that, but I just think the fact that it's not a proper regulator and it is just a standard stock Miyota movement, and all they've done is omitted the hour hand from the main pinion and just put in a 24-hour indicator. It doesn't quite justify the price tag, I don't think, unfortunately. Obviously, a lot of these kind of watches you can find for discount. The RRP, you never really pay the full RRP. So hopefully in a little bit of time it will come on Amazon, or a little bit cheaper, or they'll have a sale on. Because if you were to get it at a cut price, then it is a very, very nice watch. Just be aware that you really do have to get used to the hour hand not being, as you'd expect. It behaves in a completely different way. So that's the one thing you need to be aware of. Everything else, very, very nice. The general construction of it is really nice. No issues whatsoever. Everything's put together so well. The dial is really well designed. The case is lovely. Obviously, you've got a nice custom rotor as well on the movement. The movement itself is regulated really well. 5.2 seconds a day out is pretty special, really. And then a really nice, lovely, luxurious leather strap as well. So the watch in itself is very nice, and I enjoy wearing it, and people love it. It looks fantastic on. So it's just, in my eyes, just ever so slightly too expensive. So hopefully, when the price is down, go for one then, and you will be getting a cracking watch for the money. So that was the Dufa or Deutsche Uhrenfabrik Aalto Regulator, and that's what it's all about.